Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
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 Okay, everybody is here? Are we missing anyone?
Yes, we're missing Krista
Krista.
and Mike.
Okay, we'll wait a few more minutes.
And Krista may not be on. I think she's in Canada.
Mike is also not here.
He should be on. I haven't heard anything from him.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and convene the meeting. Does that sound good? Welcome. Yes. Did I just hear something? Yes, go ahead. We will go ahead and begin the monthly land bank meeting, and the meeting is being recorded. For anyone who doesn't want their video recorded, you can turn off your camera. And we will begin the morning with general public comments. There will be an opportunity later in the meeting for public comments on the draft agricultural policy. So this would be just general public comments. And if you wish to make a comment, raise your hand virtually, or if you have your video on. I see a comment, and it's from Steve Olvey. Morning, Steve, go ahead.
Good morning, good folks. I wasn't going to say anything. I didn't really realize that your retreat involved the public and maybe even public participation. So I missed out on that, and it sure looked like a great agenda. You guys are, again, just superlative in the way you handle your responsibilities here. And I am very happy to see that there was, it appears to be a very careful discussion about how and whether the land bank should, Land Conservation Bank should consider adaptation and resilience to climate change in the way you look at acquisition or management. You guys are good to your word, and I just have felt like I've flapped my lips enough times about this. So I just wanted to say I look forward to that part of the meeting when you may begin to discuss what kind of a policy stance or direction, if any, you may be taking. And I just thank you for being good to your word and having what probably was a very robust discussion. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve. I believe the meeting was recorded if you wanted to know if you had a chance to look at it versus just the notes. Let's see, do we have anyone else? I'm not seeing anybody else. Does someone, Lincoln, maybe you have Mike's,
Mike is on now.
he is on? How come I'm not
Yep.
seeing him? Okay. There he is. Okay, got it. Okay, so first off then, or next, we will approve the February 18th, 2022 minutes. Were there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, I don't see any corrections, so excellent job then. And the February minutes are approved. Next up is chair and commissioner reports. Do any commissioners wish to make a report? Brian, I
Quiet
thought,
morning.
what's the, yeah. Brian, I thought you might mention our little turtleback stroll, but
Oh, well, I'd be glad to if you like. Sandy and I went out last week with Peter and Aaron to take a look at the new turtleback acquisition. This is in relation to the forthcoming revision of the turtleback management plan. And we wanted to look specifically at the shoreline, the very small shoreline acquisition part of that, and a suggestion that had come through the in the draft management plan of connecting what I'll call the uphill side of the of the turtleback acquisition to the shoreline, which would necessitate crossing Deer Harbor Road. And I think we all unanimously decided that crossing Deer Harbor Road at that point was a dangerous thing, given the very small shoreline and difficulty of access. This is a point that Sandy brought up originally in commenting on the plan. So we debated a little bit about whether, how and if to connect that shoreline access. And I think that our unanimous conclusion was to leave that for the future, because we don't know what's going to happen with most of the shoreline, particularly the adjacent Lummi parcel. We thought we would focus on the uphill side of the acquisition and dead end the trail at that point for the moment. Does that sum it up, Sandy?
that does. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Any other commissioners with something to add? We have on our list here reviewing the retreat. Anyone have comments about the retreat or that the commission retreat that we completed last month? Was it worthwhile?
I think it was worthwhile, and I think the notes were good. I think it's good for everybody to go back and review them, as I did last night, because I forgot about some parts of the conversation, and I think it was fruitful.
Thank you. I too thought it was. What I think we need to do, and I'm not sure if we don't really have it slated right in this time frame to do it, but I think there would be a number of action item, like next steps that come out of this that would be good to have as a bullet point list. You know, basically we discussed, and it was more strategy and approach and priorities, but there's got to be something concrete, I think, that comes out of it, so that it, as Steve mentioned, it can affect our policy. So I think we need to set aside time to do that. I know that Lincoln has a draft climate type policy that is on our future agenda items. So maybe that would be one of the times to look at how we might change things. Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
And after the retreat, I know David made the comment to me that both that extended retreat meeting and the extended CAUFELT meeting, we were really able to work through the important issues that we can't really get to during these regular meetings, and that perhaps we should do more of them, whether or not they're slated on a more regular basis, more than once a year, or they're basically work sessions when we come across something that that's important, that requires more focus, a longer term focus and discussion. I think we should consider adding another extended meeting for it. Yes.
Andy, if I
Yes.
could point out, there are 2 action items listed at the bottom of the retreat notes.
Okay.
The first is what activities are not getting done. I think that's a general question addressed to staff. And the second one is, what are staff reactions to the commission's retreat conversation?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. We are looking for some feedback from staff. So maybe we're ahead of schedule again. So by chance, would staff be ready to comment on that, or not, Brian, or not, Lincoln?
Well, I don't know. We can see how people want to pitch in here. We can, if people aren't ready to just do it off the cuff, then
Right.
we
Yeah.
get them to write something up and get it back to you. But
Yeah, not trying to put you on the spot at
it
all.
looks to
So.
me like Peter has something to say, though.
Well, I was going to actually favor a joint written response by staff,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
that sounds much better than just on the fly as me trying to fill time. I think, let's see. Suggested there on the summary, the meeting summary, there was one question I had, a statement that did not jive with my recollection, and it was page 4. It was suggested that the most important role for the land bank in addressing climate change is public education. I don't recall that being the most important thing. I thought the most important thing we're doing is protecting land. I think it's an important thing, but just wondered what you commissioners thought of that statement. Is it accurate?
you could just have a vote on whether,
Yeah, I'm going to, just since everybody is pretty quiet, wake up.
I
Well,
think we did have a vote on that. I mean, John toted up all of the responses and listed them statistically at point number. So I don't know how that came out. I don't recall. But I assume that reflects the way the vote came out.
is
I
that,
don't remember.
was that in the ranking section or is it another? I haven't,
I'll open it right now and see.
it's not really in the ranking section like that. I mean, it's not as the highest priority.
Public education is not listed. Let's see. What we did is we prioritized acquisitions and we prioritized stewardship. What this is saying is specific to climate change, that public education is the most important role. Anyways, we can we can get back to that. Maybe I can get with Tanya or John and question where that came from.
Sandy, you just said that you think it's an important thing, maybe not the most important. I'll stand with that, certainly. I don't think we need to quibble
Okay.
about whether it was
All right.
number one or not.
How about this? How about we change it? It was suggested that an important role for the land bank in addressing climate change is public education. Yeah,
that,
Works for me.
is that fine? We can get more into what that means later on.
Well, the notes say that it was suggested that's a statement of fact that somebody made that suggestion. It's not a statement that everybody else agreed.
Okay, all right.
So, I
Okay,
don't know
so it
that
wasn't a
means-
consent. I see what you're saying. It was not a consensus item. So we
Right.
can just leave it as it is. Thank you
Right.
for pointing that out.
Yep.
Let's see. Okay, let's move on. Is Christine here?
I don't see her. And
Okay,
I didn't hear anything from her, so I expected her to be on.
okay,
I
well,
will-
it's a 15 minutes, 15 minutes early for her. So
Okay. Hop on.
two items that came up at the meeting, things that I brought up that I don't think I really heard commissioner feedback on them. And it had to do with the land bank playing a larger role within county planning and integrating. This is in terms of climate change. So there's the new climate and environment or climate and sustainability committee, and they are looking for a land bank liaison to serve on that committee, which sounds like a very good idea. Lincoln or Aaron, do you want to speak to that, of who might? First off, would there be any commissioners that would want to be that liaison?
I was going to investigate that a little further and
Okay.
find out exactly what they're looking for, but Jim already
Okay.
raised his hand, so it's too late.
Jim did?
I would be interested in doing that as well, but yeah, I want to know what that entails. That's
Okay.
something I'd be interested in doing too.
Okay, all right, well, that's good to know. So Lincoln, you can get back to us on that.
Yeah, I'll find out exactly what they're looking for and what kind of commitment it might be. But I apologize. I was going to do that before this meeting and I have not.
Okay, no problem. The other thing that, as Steve mentioned we touched on, but we didn't really get into the meat of it. And that is the possibility of using land bank funds to purchase land to be used for broad environmental reasons, which would be things like community composting and things like that. We didn't really get into those specifics. I showed, and I didn't get any feedback. I showed a sample of how we could contribute without actually owning the land. I think that this is something that maybe could come about as the liaison with the strategic commission, climate committee comes about. But I just wanted to point out, Steve, that it is on the radar, that we didn't really come to a firm conclusion. We're trying to figure out how the land bank can play a role and within our mandate and support other efforts. Does that sound accurate, Lincoln?
It does to me. I mean, through the course of land bank operations, I think there's always been this question about, well, our mission is clear and we can only do certain things. However, when we're considering specific properties, those properties tend to be not just monolithic. It's not like it's 100% natural old growth forest. Oftentimes when we're looking at properties, there are parts of them that are disturbed or have been used in different ways. And so there's always some potential there, whether it be for affordable housing or for some other operation that's not, it doesn't fit within our mission, but if we can find a way to help other organizations take on that piece of the property, I don't know that we could buy it for them, but certainly we're always looking for opportunities like that.
Like a conservation easement to protect a swath of forest or something like that. Okay. Yes, Brian.
Yeah, Sandy, if you were looking for a reaction for that,
Yes.
I think it deserves a reaction. I was actually hoping that it would be brought up as a more substantive discussion matter during our retreat, because to me, it's a big question. It's the kinds of things that you suggested are a different direction for the land bank. And I think it's a very interesting suggestion, but it's something new for us. And I think it requires a whole separate discussion in itself. I would encourage us to have that discussion in the future, because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the kinds of things that we could do in partnership with other agencies and what that might mean for us. So I would encourage us to explore it further.
Okay. David?
I agree with what Brian's saying. It's new, it's very interesting. I think it deserves discussion. I think it, you've talked about a couple things. How can the land bank help other organizations, or interface with other organizations in the county and help to steer or influence policy? And I think there's a topic here that we should look into, whether it needs a retreat or a moderated discussion. I don't know, but there's a nice set of things to think about right there. Important stuff.
So how about this? The future agenda item of climate change policy statement. If we could, and I'd be happy to work with staff and look at what Lincoln already has. If we could put together some kind of a draft that would provide, then we can follow through that draft of those suggestions, and then that will spur the conversation with commissioners. What do we think about this, this, and this, playing these various roles? But that way we have something in front of us as we're crafting a policy, and we can work with it then. The other thing I might point out, what's different about this particular topic of, say, for example, community composting, or, finding some way. I don't see that as something that's going to change our direction for, that's to me like a one-off, or one per island or something like that. It's not like an ongoing thing, like we're going to begin pouring funds into something. It's just, so it might be better if we even had a specific potential role to play and bring that opportunity forward, instead of talking too much about whether we're open to it at this point. Okay, so that was two things. One is drafting a policy, and then getting that in front of commissioners to discuss and hash out. Okay.
I think Jim
Yes.
has his hand up.
Oh, Jim. Oh, I see. Blended in there. Jim.
I think we, whatever we do about this, and however we apply a policy, I think fundamentally, bottom line is that we need to take each instance as it comes up and make sure it fits into our mandate as a qualifier.
Absolutely. Agree. Brian, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, it's just your comment that you thought that this was a one-off and not a regular thing. You had talked in the past about land bank being involved in policy, and specifically climate policy.
Yes.
So as I say, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what that would mean, but policy is a constant thing.
I meant in terms of acquiring, or for, diverting funds for, let's say, a community composting operation on San Juan Island, if there was a way with land tied to land preservation. Not that we buy it. We don't buy it, we don't operate it, but is
Right.
there an opportunity that solid waste is looking at that is attached, includes a forest, and we say you can only clear this area, and we will, contribute with a conservation easement, then there wouldn't be five different of those acquisitions happening on San Juan Island. That's what I meant. The policy thing, yes. I meant we're not going to look at 20 different acquisitions.
Right.
Yes, Lincoln.
It's a project, a specific project.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
was going to say that it really seems like this is something that needs to come out of this climate commission, where they should be looking at the county as a whole and thinking about the various roles that different people and organizations can play. And we should be plugging into that rather than trying to come up with something on our own.
Okay.
It may very well be that there are good places, there's a good synergy there that
Got
we
it.
can bring something to the table.
Okay. That sounds like a good plan. So there's an overall plan, and we find out where we plug into the plan and discuss any options there. All right. Christine is here. Yay. Christine, we are ready for you.
Thank you. Christine is here. She was a little bit late. She likes to be here on time, but hopefully the agenda, I was hoping the agenda moved along the way it was written and I wouldn't be noticing.
Right. Yes. No, that's fine.
Good morning.
Morning.
Here I am.
Morning.
Good morning. It's always Friday when I'm with you, which always is a good happy Friday.
Thank God.
I am at home, not in my car, although I see Miles is in his car. I am happy to say that although council has been muddling in a little bit of some important issues lately, there's also just been a whole lot of housekeeping. So I'll stick to some maybe more interesting items of note. Recently, the sheriff's office has determined that the county drug dog is no longer employable due to legislation that is related to use of force. And at this point, although it has not happened yet, she will most likely be surplused into the care of her handler, which is, I suppose, the outcome everybody would hope for. And I can tell you that I spent a couple days observing training, and that dog is very well cared for and incredibly loved by her handler. Council recently supported the recommendation that the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee put forth 2 funding cycles this year. The due date for the first round recently passed, I believe it was March 4th, and we did receive 27 applications. Those applications are vying for $1.7 million in this first round. That being said, those 27 applications are asking for 2.1 million. So I actually think that that gap isn't too far off. I'm really excited to see what those projects are. As you all know, the governor lifted the mask mandate as of the 12th, as well did Dr. James for San Juan County. And I think that at this point, you know, we all live in different realities as far as that is concerned, and that's a perfect place for all of us to live. We get to decide for ourselves what we like or don't like, or what we want and don't want. But I am hopeful that the masks are gone for now, for good. Council continues to work through the legislative process to place a cap on vacation rental permits in the county. And there are a couple more months of process, legislative process, which does include a public hearing before that is complete. Although that being said, there should be a resolution or excuse me, an ordinance in place by July, so that the moratorium is then lifted. The county is mid-construction. I've talked about this before when it first started, of a shop on Beaverton Valley that will house public works, roads, facilities, ER&R, and environmental stewardship. I got to tour it lately. It is pretty, it's large. It's large. It's going to consolidate so many departments into one building that we will be able to surplus, or, you know, or think creatively perhaps about the property that they will be vacating. I got to choose the paint colors. They're really good. The ferry scene, as we all know it, has been a mixed bag lately. It's not as bad as it's ever been. Certainly it's been a lot better than it was. It was acknowledged, I guess it's been 2 weeks, and so certainly you all know that Washington State Ferries will not be traveling or taking us to Sydney this spring, and very much unlikely that it will be taking us to Sydney this summer. The spring schedule is going to start 2 weeks later than it normally would. I believe it will begin April 11th, whereas it would typically be the end of March. Sorry about that. Last but not least, there's interesting parts of my job that I find really redeeming, or redeeming for interesting ways. And in interesting ways. Recently, one of the public works engineers pointed out some graffiti, some unfortunately etched in fresh concrete racial slurs in front of the fairgrounds building. And when it first happened a handful of years ago, you know, they did what they could to patch it up, to cover it up, and it looked really good because I saw pictures of that. But over time, that patching sort of starts breaking up and crumbling, and in fact, like the etching becomes more prominent. And this engineer happened to notice it and said, wow, we need to fix that. And he brought me to the site and asked basically if I agreed with fixing it, because the price tag is surprisingly large. But I'm happy to say, obviously I want it fixed. He wants it fixed. We agree to fix it, and it was done in like a week. And those are the small bits of my job that I really, really like to be a part of. Anyway, that's it for me. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Christine, I was wondering if you wanted to say a few things about the policy that you're considering on boards and commission behavior. I don't know what the title of it is, but.
Yes. Yes, I will say at this point, it has been very clear that we need to find an alignment, you know, as a council to have a policy that states exactly what we expect of the volunteers on boards and commissions, from behavior to expectation to yes. So that is in development. It started with specifically with the Planning Commission, and so that document has been completed for the Planning Commission, and that document is now being translated to apply to all boards and commissions. And it is on the agenda for Tuesday, so there will be more information at that point, but it is in the works.
Any other questions for, thank you, Christine. Any other questions, Brian?
Yeah, Christine, going back to your discussion of the LTAC funds, I understand there's a new tourism master plan in the offing, and if I'm right, that was funded by the previous round of LTAC, and it's being conducted by the Department of Environmental Stewardship. Is there anything that you can say about that? And specifically, will it involve the land bank in any ways?
That's a good question. I'm glad Lincoln's raising his hand, because everything you said is correct, except I have yet not, you know, put my hand in that pot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so Brandon Cadwell, who's our Parks Director, is taking the lead on the Parks, Trails, Natural Areas Plan, which is fitting, since Donna Wuthnow for 3 cycles or more did the same thing. So it has been a joint project between the Land Bank and Parks, Public Works. In the last round, it also, the non-motorized transportation plan, part of the comp plan, got thrown into it. I don't know whether that's still going to be there or not. It was kind of I'm not sure how well that fit, but in the past, we've put up some money. We've had nonprofits actually put a lot of time into it. This is the first time we've actually applied for LTAC funds to do it, but it makes sense given that the amount of money that's out there. So Brandon's got an application going in for LTAC funding. And yeah, he's taking the lead. We'll be working on it, and the Department of Environmental Stewardship, their first time around through this, will be probably the third county entity that's going to play a significant role with it.
Lincoln, that was an interesting answer, but I'm not sure it was my question. I wasn't talking about the PTNA, but my understanding from a recent meeting of the Visitors Bureau is that there is what I think is a separate tourism master plan.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
coming up. Yeah, okay. So that was the one I was asking. I'm also interested in the PTNA. And I don't know how those two interface, in fact. But tourism certainly has an impact on land bank properties. So I'm wondering whether we're in line to be included in that.
Yeah, we're participating in that. Kendra Smith is basically the liaison between that effort and the terrestrial managers group. The first time that tourism master plan came up was probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that. And it was kind of a troubling concept in that it seemed to be very much about tourism promotion. And so the terrestrial managers group got pretty concerned about this, in that everyone who manages conservation lands bears a significant burden for dealing with tourism. And so we wanted to make sure that the stewardship concept was really explored in that plan. And so it's been revised. There's now a consultant working on it. The scope was broadened. So I think it's probably in fairly good shape. I needed to check in with Kendra to see exactly what's happening at this point, but we're definitely participating.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Doug had his hand up, but then it went away. And it was white, which was interesting. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I thought he was going to add that.
Okay, I'm looking for hands. Am I missing
Oh, wait,
anyone?
it's my hand. Okay, never mind. I have a white hand if it's over his name.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Happy Friday. I'm going now.
Thank you. So 9:10 on the dot, we're ready for the director's report from Lincoln.
Very good. So I'm going to talk about a few projects here that we've got going. Just want to check and make sure I touch on everything here. Yeah, so let me just start with the easy one. The Lopez Community Land Trust Trail easement. I don't have a visual on this, unfortunately, but it's basically a trail that goes north from the Lopez Hill Addition property up to Lopez Sound Road, which is through the Lopez Community Land Trust property. So we've got an agreement on a trail easement. I'm just waiting for a surveyor to get me a legal description of it, and we'll go ahead and take it to council and record. So that will be a nice connection to make from the north down to Lopez Hill. On other ones, I'm going to share my screen here. So the first one I want to talk about is the Hauschka property, which is on the top of Katy Mountain. This is a shot of the view looking pretty much north off of that property, maybe a little bit northeast, but you can see Turtleback, pretty spectacular. And here is the property itself. This is our existing Katy Mountain Preserve acreage. So you can see it kind of ties this little backward L together with the rest of it. And also the trust is getting a donation of this property here for the Case Bolt property. We are probably going to be talking to these folks a little bit to see what we might be able to do there as well. But for today's purposes, This is the property we're focusing on. You may remember, and that's just a closer up shot of it, that there was some issue with an access easement. We've resolved that issue. It's that access easement, it's not all that critical. Just to show you, this is the access point through this parcel here. But for pedestrian access, it's not an issue at all, because pedestrian access would come from our starting point, which would be 3 Corner Lake Road, up through our existing property. So it's just not an issue. In any case, we've resolved that, and we are ready to go to closing on that one. So I'm taking the deed to council on Tuesday. And after that, we're hoping to close by the 31st. So that's just a shot of Doug trying to fly there. I'm not sure if it worked. Okay, next one, the Entrance Mountain resale property. We're continuing with this. As you may remember, here's our Entrance Mountain Preserve, the main preserve, which we're retaining. And then this northern 10-acre property here, just a little bit closer. And this one, when it was purchased, actually all of Entrance Mountain, when it was purchased, was part of the conservation buyer program, but the commission elected to keep the other part of it, this one being separate. The thought has been it could be reconveyed with a conservation easement on it. And so that's what we're working on. We've had discussions with the neighbors, and they've come up with a price. I think we should probably put off discussion of that specific until we get to the executive session portion. But the idea here is to resell the property with a Forever Wild conservation easement. One of the rationale here is that here's Cascade Lake. Here's Olga, the road going to Olga. So you can see this property is pretty visible from those public areas. So protecting that view is really pretty important. But we'll talk a little bit later about the specifics of that property. So I don't know if you have any questions about that, but I just thought I would throw that out there. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about Glenwood Inn a bit. Here again, I think we're going to need to have a conversation in executive session. But where we stand now, a week ago on Thursday, we made an offer. We were not the high bid. We were not even close to the high bid, and figured, well, that's probably it for this one. However, we learned yesterday that high bid had been withdrawn. So there is another offer. Apparently, we're going to have a conversation about it today with our realtors and figure out whether it's still possible to salvage something here. But looking a lot more promising than it did last Friday. So I'll keep you posted on it, and I want to I'll come back to specific numbers when we get into executive session. I think that's more appropriate for that conversation.
Sure been getting a lot of press.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we put out the press release when we were going to put out a press release when we put an offer in, and then no offers were coming in while the listing period was open. So we waited and waited, and we ended up submitting something on the last day, which is when the other offer was made. And we realized, wow, we're not even close to them. So that was how that press release was shaped. Definitely sparked some reaction on Orcus. I think because it's very confusing, you know, when we're working with the Preservation Trust, they need to raise money for projects. They do it in a very specific way. It's, I think, fairly typical for nonprofits who are doing large dollar projects. And they need to line up major donors first. So they have a quiet campaign period while they're trying to do that. And they only really want to have a public campaign once they've got 75 or 80% of the total raised. Otherwise, if you start with a public campaign, typically you're not going to raise that much money as a percentage of the overall project from just the community at large. You know, if you raise 50,000, 100,000, that's great. That's a lot of money, honestly, but in the context of these kinds of projects where you're needing to raise millions of dollars, it's just not going to get you there. And then if the campaign fails, it's a disaster. So they were in the process of trying to find major donors. It has been tough sledding for sure, but they were willing to come to the table to put the offer in, even going so far as taking out a loan to do it because they felt so strongly about it. The loan would have been against their other assets. But as a result of that, there has been no public campaign. So when we sent out this letter telling people that we'd made an offer, it fell short. Naturally, there were people who were just very confused and wanted to know why they hadn't heard about it, why they hadn't had an opportunity to contribute, and questions along those lines. There's clearly a lot of interest in the property, but it gets confusing when it plays out like this. Hopefully, we will still be successful. If that's true, if our offer is accepted, then there will be ample opportunity for the public to participate in a fundraising campaign. But we'll have to see how that plays out. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Lincoln. Any questions for Lincoln on the director's report? Brian?
Not a question, but just as a note on Lincoln's last comment about Glenwood Inn and the public reaction. I noticed that there's been a lot more public reaction on Facebook than there has on in the Orcasonian, or I haven't looked at the Sounder or any other papers, but that kind of indicates to me that Facebook is a very good way for us to say whatever we want to say to the public.
Yeah, I think that's true, Brian. We're at a little bit of a disadvantage in that our Facebook person happens to be in Mexico currently.
Oh.
Just not an inopportune time for Tanya to take a vacation, but I tried to get her flight canceled, but it didn't work.
Just saying that in general, I think it's that's an effective way for us to communicate, apparently. And I know we have a Facebook page. That's great.
So depending on how well I'm not on Facebook, but depending on how well our page is followed, it could be posting on other pages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've gone through this kind of thing. The page that it's getting most attention is the Orcas Rant and Rave page, I believe.
Right.
That's a little bit different from the San Juan Island Rant and Rave, which we completely avoid because it's pretty toxic. I think David Myland is the only person I've seen able to successfully navigate that page and come out relatively unscathed. But Orcas tends to have more productive discussion on their rant and rave. So it's
Sometimes.
definitely something we should look. Yeah, sometimes we should look at it though.
Okay, thank you for that update. Exciting to see Hoshka coming together, and the trail easement, and more possibilities with Glenwood in. So we are ahead of schedule a little bit, but so I don't want to take a break just yet. I was thinking of flip-flopping here, leaving the draft ag policy for 9:50 since public comment is open at that time, and see if we can just go ahead and switch over to the outreach and volunteer report. Tanya isn't here, but there are some things that can be talked about it. Is everybody okay with that modification?
Sure.
Okay. So the dates are on your agenda for the community conversations. I know District 3 Orcas is April 27th. Just want to let me look at the calendar and see when the other ones are. All right, District 1 is April 6th on a Wednesday, and District 3 is April 20th on a Wednesday from 5:30 to 7. So we just wanted to make sure that commissioners have that on their calendars. We would ask you to attend if possible. That's 5:30 to 7. These are individual district focused meetings. The main topic will be stewardship, with a presentation on general stewardship from staff, and then stewardship activities taking place in that particular district. And then we will have Q&A with the audience. Yes, Brian, I know you're about.
And just to note, I will not be here on April 27th.
Okay, all right. Mexico?
No, I wish. Maybe Arizona.
Okay, all right. It will be recorded.
Thanks.
So one thing about this is last time District 1 didn't get a very good turnout. You were the first ones kind of as the guinea pig. And once we saw that, Brian and I really got the word out to our networks, and then we had a much bigger attendance. So Tanya is going to be, when does she come back, Lincoln? Back Monday or?
I think it's Monday. It's next week. I'm not sure which day.
Okay, so she's putting together a little statement and invite to the community conversation, generic one, and we'll send to the commissioners and ask you to send them out to your personal networks. As well as she'll send it to Preservation Trust and all different places. Let's see. I have a few questions, and I know Tanya isn't here, but Lincoln, maybe you can answer. One is, so we got a new newsletter, or our first of the newsletter. We haven't had an announcement of Higgins of that purchase. Seems like is it because we want to try to keep it on the down low so more people don't just start showing up there? Feels like it was a pretty big deal and a significant property, and we could maybe even have a renaming contest, or I don't know what, but people know we're collecting, that we had a banner year last year, and I think it would be important for them to know how we're spending the money. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, it should be something that's more broadly presented to the public, for sure. We've certainly had a lot of feedback from the public on that particular property. So they've gotten the message pretty clearly, at least some of them have. It's a little bit complicated in that it's wrapped into the discussions around the national monument, and our original idea of reselling that property to the national monument has caused some pause in the community just because of the way BLM has responded to public comments. They don't have their management plan yet. So there's just a lot of moving pieces associated with this one, but definitely it's something that we should just spell out and get out a little bit more broadly.
Okay. Another question is, does anyone have, okay,
This is-
Amanda, I see.
just pitch in.
Yes,
Yes, I agree that an announcement about the Higgins acquisition should happen, and it could be like shared on Lopez Rock. It seems like word of mouth has certainly spread, people know, but in our communications meeting, we talked about producing these kind of new signs that we could put up at the entrance of the property that just describes the area being closed and why. So I'd kind of like to have
have
something.
them up first.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
there's some curious folks around, and but yes, I agree with the general communication plan and an announcement will be in the works.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see.
Sandy?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I,
Yes.
I would like to suggest that for where it's appropriate, for new acquisitions like that, when we're not ready to open them, we could still celebrate them and take them to the public by taking the public to them. That is taking selected guided tours of the property at various times, and I think that would.
That's a great
where
idea.
there's not a risk of encouraging trespass and further use, that could really help spread the word of what we're doing.
What do you think of? I like that idea. What do the stewards think of that?
I like that idea too. I think it's possible, and I've already had some, like more stakeholders who have been involved doing tours, and volunteers who are already pretty active. We've talked about doing some work parties out there as another way that we can share the property when it's closed to public access.
Okay. Thank you. That's exciting. Lincoln, we were having quarterly meetings with the Preservation Trust. I can't remember when the last one was, but it feels like a long time ago.
We need to reinitiate those.
Okay. All right, and then the last communication related question that I have that I've mentioned to Lincoln is in looking at this, the stewardship report, or no, the stewardship projected budget. One thing that isn't captured on there Lincoln said there are quite a few ecological restoration type projects that are happening or planned for District 1, which has this very heavy on public access budget. But it would be good to get those for the commission to know about it more than just the monthly report and get the stories out about it. Lincoln, anything further on that?
Yeah, I think what became clear when I was talking about this with Sandy was the fact that what the commission sees is that budget, and it's very project centric. So it doesn't necessarily convey an accurate impression of what's actually going on overall in a particular district. So for San Juan, we have all of these public access projects that may or may not happen this year, next year. But what we don't have on there so much is the fact that we're doing a lot of work with Gary Oak restoration, with other kinds of ecological management. And because that's mostly staff time, or we're getting help from Conservation Corps crews, and there's not a big capital component to it. We're not letting out a huge contract to put in a parking area or whatever it is. It kind of goes under the radar. So I think it conveys, our budgets convey a misimpression of actually what we're doing. And we need to do a better job of finding a way to express that outside of the context of the budget. Certainly, if the commission's confused about that, that means that the public is also confused about it. So we just need to do a much better job of communicating what we're actually doing as a whole.
Okay, any comments or questions about that? All right, let's see. Any conversations? Well, let's go ahead and let's take a break until 9:50. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, where we can pick up the public component for the ag policy so that we're on time for that. Okay, see everybody at 9:50. Okay, so we're back at 9:50, but I'm waiting a few more minutes for people to rejoin us. Mike, Jim, David, I think so all commissioners are here. Lincoln is here. Okay, so now we're moving on to the draft agricultural policy, which we first reviewed in December and have made some tweaks and just now getting all those put together. So we're going to begin by taking public comments, as this is a public hearing. So any member of the public who wishes to make a comment about this latest draft, please raise your hand. I see a hand. Kathy Morris, go ahead.
I just have a quick comment that this material was not available on the website. And I had to request it from Charlie late last night. So other people that I told about this meeting, I don't know what happened. I'm off island, but the meeting material was not available on the website. So
Lincoln, is that the case? I got it all in one package with the meeting. Let me check the website.
I think this may be another issue with Tanya being out.
All right. So then I think we can go ahead and thanks for pointing that out, Kathy. I didn't know that, and that's not how it's supposed to go down. So I feel like that we should not be making any decisions at this meeting. We'll have to carry it over to next meeting. But we can go ahead and for anyone, I see Bruce, you have your hand raised, for anyone that does have comments who did get a look at this draft, please share your comments, and then the commission can also have their discussion as well, and we'll carry the public hearing forward to next month. Does that sound right, Lincoln?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, Bruce.
Thanks, Andy. Hello, everyone. So first off, I want to say that it's really encouraging to see how many changes this has all gone through and all the time this gone into this. It's very, to me, it's very positive. I will make a couple of brief comments, and basically my first comment would be based upon the bottom of page 12, the monitoring. I think that the monitoring objectives are very well spelled out finally, and I really do hope that the land bank follows through with this monitoring and the objectives are reached. And then again, another comment under the next section, community and communication. Not only creating opportunities to engage with the farming community, but letting the public know about what's going on and making sure that monitoring data is widely distributed to the public to show the public that the agricultural properties in your portfolio are indeed being monitored and that the data is available whenever that data is aggregated. So really, that's pretty much my comments, and I want to thank you for all the work you put into this, and to everybody else who's been participating in this. It's been a long road. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. I think that's a good addition there to clarify. If we don't get the word out and nobody knows, then it doesn't. We're missing a good opportunity. So Charlie, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I was also going to note what Kathy said. I found that out earlier this week, and I did my best to pass it out to ARC and anybody I knew that would be interested. And but I agree that moving it down the road makes sense. I've gotten just a couple of notes from readers. Adam Green sent in a comment, and I'm just relaying his suggestions was to and to paraphrase, put more emphasis on agricultural lands being a primary carbon sink along with forests, but as far as climate change section, that potential there really emphasizing that that resource is sinking carbon into farmlands. And other than that, I think that's all I have to add right now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners? Unless there's anyone else with their hand up first. I don't see anyone. I just, yes, who's got their hand up?
David,
David, thank you. Go ahead, David.
I just want to say that I think Bruce Gregory made a nice point there about making the data available to the public. I mean, I think ideally, if we're conducting monitoring, we should have a report that's on our website. We should probably have some kind of a list of the properties that are needing monitoring, and then links to the reports that are generated from them. And that sounds like a work generating request for Charlie and other people, but I think he's right that ought to be easily accessible to everybody.
Like a report card.
Yeah, something you could quickly find. Like if I were to Google San Juan County Land Bank monitoring reports, I would hope to find a page where I can just see a list of, here's Cofelt, here's whatever, here's when we've been looking at them, here's what we've seen.
Okay, good idea. Bruce Robinson.
Yeah, I was just curious how we'll find this report now. Will it be on the website after this, or will we need to request it?
You're talking about this draft, the document that we're discussing?
Yes.
Draft ag policy?
Yes.
So as soon as Tanya gets back, Lincoln, is she the one that uploads, or is it the outside web person?
Yeah, she uploads.
Yeah. So in looking on the website, I don't even see any. Yeah, there were some balls dropped. I didn't see a meeting announcement in the paper. I don't see these materials on the website. So there needs to be a retroactive upload of these materials to the website. And then I think we need a press release specific to the draft ag policy, and go ahead and what do you think? This is the final draft. Do we take more? Are we open to any more public written comments, or did that close in December? I'm not sure how we go about this. Charlie or Lincoln?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can still take comments. We can get it uploaded as soon as Tanya gets back, and just have another conversation at the next meeting.
Okay, and then before the next meeting, there's a press release announcing the meeting and
Yep.
saying that this is a subject, and click here to download. Okay. Does that answer your question, Bruce?
That answers my question, except can you give me a timeline as to when Tanya may return?
She'll be back next week, so we'll get it posted by the end of the week.
We can go ahead and email this out to you.
Yeah, we could do that.
We can get that out to you today.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Why don't
Okay.
you put your
Email in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. Put your email address in chat, and Charlie, maybe you can send that out afterwards.
Yeah, you could also just email me, Bruce. I think I have you in my email list, but I can send it to you.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat, but then I'll also email you as a reminder. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, and apologies that these slipped through the cracks. Someone had Mexico on her mind, Mexico fever. Okay, any other commissioners with comments or corrections or questions about this latest draft? And if you're not speaking, please put yourself on mute. Okay, well then I guess I'll launch into my comments or question. Comments or questions. The first one is on page 7. It talks about water quality protection. I don't have the page up, but it's addressing water. And there's 2 items. It says prioritize water quality protection, and then prioritize agricultural management to maintain and improve open space landscapes. And to me, it seems like those can potentially be at odds. For example, if you really prioritize water quality protection, that may necessitate a bigger buffer or planting trees or something like that. So Charlie, I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, sure. And really good points and good discussion. But my perspective is that you can do both, and we should be able to do both. Where we have these farmlands, we identify our critical areas, streams and wetlands, and then work with often the conservation district to look at management and tools and sometimes infrastructure to prioritize clean water. So yeah, like you say, buffers, vegetation, filters, heavy use areas. So I think they work together. And I could see how it could read otherwise, that they're conflicting, but that's my perspective, and maybe some of the others that worked on this have some more to add.
So I'll wait and see if anyone from staff has anything to add. My thought is this: there's still a sequential order in terms of, if you begin with water quality protection, then from there, it doesn't mean that activities can't happen, but there's a guiding, there's a hierarchy there. You can't start the other way around and work backwards. I'm just curious what people think of that. And if you make 2 things a priority, that's still, it doesn't reflect that hierarchy. Bruce Gregory.
I think, Sandy, in this case, if you added the words prioritize water quality protection with best management practices that are science-based, you then build what we call a resource management system and platform. Basically, the next statement, prioritize active ag management to maintain and improve agricultural resource land, open space landscapes. So if you're doing the prioritization for water quality and you're installing best management practices, let's say in this case, we're replanting a buffer along a seasonal stream, such as what's been happening over on Caulfield, then you're actually prioritizing that management, agriculturally speaking, to maintain the open space landscape while you're also prioritizing the water quality protection. So it's just a matter of, in my thinking, the order that these are in, or maybe that statement to further link the prioritization of water quality to active agricultural management.
I see. Maybe it belongs all in one sentence.
That would do it too.
Okay, maybe think about that, Charlie, if there's a.
Yeah, we can do some wordsmithing there. I think that makes sense. And I jotted down some of Bruce's language.
Okay, thank you. My next one, page 8, where it says control priority invasive weeds. you know, there's different ways of controlling controlling weeds, and I think we have a guiding document. It's an integrated weed management plan or something like that. Am I right?
Correct.
So I was thinking that it should say control priority invasive weeds following the policies or whatever outlined in, and then list our guiding document with a link to the guiding document. What do you, Peter?
I believe we did reference the IPM document in there, unless it somehow didn't make it into the final version. We had that at one point, and I agree.
Okay. All right. And then let's see, I have a question, and page 9, at the bottom of page 9, water resource protection. Protect existing agricultural water resources and water rights for farmed areas where appropriate. And I'm, it used to say where appropriate. No, it didn't say where appropriate. Well, you can probably clarify this. Peter, you wanted to say where appropriate. We had taken where appropriate out, and then it got put back in. My thought is we have to prioritize agricultural water resources and water rights for farmed areas, period. I'm not sure it's a where appropriate, so I'm curious why you felt it needed qualification. Go ahead.
Charlie, chime in if I don't get this right, but there's sort of two things in there in that statement. One is water resources for agriculture, as in water rights or wells or ponds. And the other is protecting water quality, water resources generally. And I think, at least in my view, not everywhere will it make sense to pump water, for example. So where appropriate. And on the other hand, protecting water quality should happen everywhere, but how you do that exactly, I think there should be some wiggle room in that, above and beyond just having buffers, but how you go about that. Charlie, you want to chime in and see if I got that right?
Yeah. And I was the one that it was initially there as when appropriate, and then I took it out and we discussed it and it got put back in. And this line's relating primarily to, the water usage for irrigation and stock water and whatnot. And certainly it will always be where appropriate. I thought it was somewhat redundant just because there's so much emphasis elsewhere on protecting water resources in general and clean water. So with each circumstance, we're going to weigh those, assess the water and what's available and what we can use sustainably.
Okay. Then the next one, it's not mentioned here under water resource protection, but I would like to see that we are monitoring. I'm sorry, Peter, did you want to go back? Did you put your hand back up, or is that an old hand?
Sorry, I just didn't take it down.
Okay. Under water resource protection, how about monitoring water quality, streams, ponds, etc., and modifying practices if needed? So we're saying we're going to protect it, but if we don't monitor and know how we're doing, how would we inform ourselves as to whether the water resource is being protected? So just like we're talking about soil testing, I'm suggesting that we test water as well and make sure that the water is not getting contaminated. Comments?
Sandy, I think it is in there. It's in a line combined with monitoring soil health. It's the second to the last in the monitoring section of objectives. When necessary or the opportunity arises, partner with a third party to monitor agricultural impacts. Yeah, we could spell it out more directly.
Maybe it wouldn't hurt to include it that it's underwater resource protection too.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Okay. Oh, one other last thing. Under page 13, community and communication objectives. Regarding JEDI, should we add a note that says that it's aligned with county policy, because the overall county has a policy, I believe.
Yes, that's great. Thanks for providing.
Yeah, okay. All right, that was it for my comments on this draft. Anyone have anything else? Okay. All right, so we did, is there anything else with us with the stewardship report beyond this draft ag policy that someone wants to bring up? Okay.
Everybody's shy today.
I know. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking. Let's see, stewardship outreach. All right, then we can go ahead and move on to future agenda items.
Hey, Sandy, can I
Yeah.
interject a sort of tangent kind of here? We're not using a consistent way of referring to ourselves in our materials. And, you know, we talked a while back about reintroducing or reinforcing conservation land bank as our label. But I see land bank in a lot of what we're putting out. And I think we should do something consistent. I think we should agree that there's one way that we're going to refer to ourselves in the materials, and we should use that all the time. And that might just be because I'm OCD, but I'm seeing inconsistency, and I just think that we should, if we're the conservation land bank, we should call ourselves that. I don't know if anybody else has feelings on this.
So in this particular document at the beginning, it says the San Juan County Conservation Land Bank, hereinafter referred to as Land Bank. So it's like a shorthand through that document. Are you saying that we should carry?
I mean, I'm not really referencing this document specifically. It may preface that way, and that's probably, you know, that covers it in a manner of speaking, but
in other areas.
Yeah, I don't know. I see it like, I remember, I don't know, 4 to 6 months ago, Lincoln brought out that, you know, we want to reinforce the use of conservation in our name. And I'm not seeing the materials consistently just showing that. So I don't know.
Even on this agenda, it doesn't say it. So
and it wouldn't be unfair to accuse me of fixating on something that isn't all that important. So you're free to do that.
I actually think that's very important. So thank you for that. Mike.
Yeah, I agree with David. Having just come on the commission, I noticed all of a sudden Conservation Land Bank and wondered, is that a subsidiary, or am I looking at New Mexico, or what is this? So I think if we're going to rebrand, you must have had a discussion about this before I joined. You decided you wanted to rename or use a certain name. I think if you're going to rebrand it that way, you ought to be very consistent. It ought to be CLB. It ought to be, you know, in every document that we use. It may take a while getting used to it if we want to do it. But having two names is not good for clarity.
Good. Lincoln, will you work with Tanya on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You know, we did do a logo update, but we didn't ever really do an announcement on it. That would help explain. Okay, where were we? Oh, future agenda items.
Looks like Doug has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Doug.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of was in and out of reception, so apologies if this happened earlier. But just also wanted to recognize that Kayla Seaforth is moving on, and just be nice to have some recognition of that. I guess in the meeting. So.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. It didn't end up on the agenda, and I forgot to jot it in. So yes, Kayla is today her last day?
No, she's working through next Thursday, I believe.
Through next Thursday. Okay. We are having a little send off today, and she's moving on to Skagit. What is it? The Skagit
Land Trust.
The Skagit Land Trust. So she won't be too far. Anything you want to say about working with her?
We mentioned it in the stewardship report, but it's been a real honor to work with Kayla. She's brought a ton to the land bank. Initially working across the islands, and then in the last year or so focused on Orcas. But she will be impossible to replace. Look forward to putting out the announcement and to trying to find somebody who can fill her shoes. But yeah, we'll miss her a lot. She's been just incredibly energetic and creative.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry to see her leave, but happy for her because she's ready for other bigger things.
Bigger, better things. Okay, good. Thank you, Doug, for reminding me about that. Okay, future agenda items. Well, we've had Jedi update on our list, and I think what we talked about, Aaron, maybe you can jump in here, or Miles, is that does Jedi putting together recommendations for the land bank? I mean, the Jedi committee? Or how do you propose that we incorporate this into a land bank commission discussion?
I'll say something about it, but I think Erin would be helpful to have her comment as well. And originally when we talked about, there were some specific actions that the Jedi could be involved in. Naming new preserves was one that came up, and so Peter's, the Jedi group has already worked on that, but being a resource for that in the future. And then also just in terms of reaching out in the future when there's a commission seat opening, how to reach out and think about how that could be more accessible to a broader group of people. And I think the role of Jedi at that point would be to offer guidance. So the commission would have to come up with sort of a list of questions or interests, and then Jedi could give feedback rather than Jedi directing the commission. It would be more of like an advisory role based on what our interest in our questions would be. That was my understanding of it.
Okay, we've lost
commission seats, running the
okay
on the commission or whatever it is.
Okay, thank you, Miles. Aaron, did you have any clarity to add?
Sorry,
to that? Yeah, I know you've got a bad connection. Aaron.
Yeah, I guess in terms of how to address this in a future, as a future agenda item, I think we can provide a summary of what our internal efforts have been, both internal to the land bank and then also some of our county-wide initiatives, which I think are now really hopefully starting to have legs of their own. So we have participation from some other departments in the county and have been trying to work together to create, all along. And it's nice this ties into Kayla because she initiated this. The vision was to have a countywide JEDI committee, and it was pretty much the land bank for a while, but we've started to get more regular participants and build on some countywide initiatives. So I think going back to your question in terms of a future agenda item, we can maybe review just efforts and initiatives in
Okay.
ways.
And it could be just in the format of an update, a one-page update that just goes in our meeting materials, and then we're informed about it.
Yeah, I can put that in a stewardship report, maybe in the next summary.
Sounds good. Yeah. All right, and then the next thing on here was climate change policy statement. I know we touched on this earlier, and the idea was to work with the Climate and Sustainability Committee, participatory in that, and find out where we plug into an overall, the overall climate strategy. I still think that when you go to our land bank website, that there should be something that talks about climate change and how important, how we are helping that would be a little bit of an educational thing, for our forests and building soils. And it's not just about places to go. It's an element that's not talked about. I don't see it anywhere on our website, and it seems like it should be there. So maybe that's what we work on in the meantime. You got a thumbs up. I got a thumbs up there. Okay, and then lastly, on page 2 of the agenda, there was the long running list of different topics that have been brought up, and just wanted to know, do any of these on this list, or are there others that you want to see coming that you think need discussion in a future commission meeting? Anything you want added to the agenda? Yes, Brian.
Sandy, not adding, but looking at this list, it seems to me that we need to revise and edit the list a little bit. Some of the things are a little bit out of date. We just talked about the climate change topic, which is at the bottom of this list, and we've talked about it quite a bit now. And I think it's kind of permanently on the agenda. We will continue talking about it, so maybe we can take that off. Some of the others, deer pressure solution, I think that a partial solution has been found. I think the deer pressure is not an immediate issue anymore. We'll continue talking about a hunting policy, of course. And then some of the things on the list, I'm not even sure what they mean anymore. I'm looking at the Brant's Brant's Landing shoreline potential purchase. I don't even remember what that was.
So I recognize this bullet list from things that members of the public brought up as ideas in
Uh,
the community conversations, and they just got aggregated onto a list
Yeah.
here. And I agree, this needs to get winnowed down. Some of them are just ideas. One thing I would like to suggest, whether it goes on a soon agenda item or it gets worked on behind the scenes, is we've in multiple instances, it's mentioned in the draft policy, ag policy, and where we had heard of potential tribal interest in Glenwood, and now we're talking about Higgins, and I know Peter has reached out to the Lummi for Turtleback. And do we need some sort of a concerted, it feels kind of scattershot. I don't know if we need a tribal liaison and to connect with who, or how we can better coordinate this. Erin.
Yeah, this is one of the countywide topics.
Okay.
Jedi Committee is working towards, because this is happening across a lot of different departments. So.
Okay, so this will be folded into that.
Yeah.
Good. Brian?
To me, that one is not an agenda item. It's not a public discussion until there's really something substantive to discuss. I think it's something that happens. It's really about relationships, which
Right.
are built gradually and kind of out of the public eye.
Okay. All right. So with that, we are going to go ahead and go into executive session to discuss acquisition of real estate.
Sandy,
Yes, yes.
can I just interrupt you? Eileen Drath has been on this call for some time, and she's got her hand up. even
Oh,
though
I'm
this
sorry, I didn't see.
comment period. I think she's got something to say.
Okay, good to see you again, Eileen. Go ahead. Unmute.
Okay, does that work?
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to add, you talked about the importance of conservation land bank. You're talking about Jedi as though everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows what it means. I think you need to define it and not just talk about it as though it's everybody's all the time language. A lot of people maybe still have never heard of this. So I hope you'll, rather than just use the
acronyms, stop with the acronyms and start.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. That's a really good point.
Thank you.
So we should definitely do that. I apologize. And JEDI stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And we will endeavor not to be tossing around acronyms without explaining what they are. So thank you, Eileen. Really appreciate that. All right, anything else before we go into executive session and looking? Nope. All right, so we will go into executive session to discuss acquisition of real estate and come back out and adjourn. We have 11:15 on here. I don't think it's going to take that long. Do you, Lincoln? All right. It's probably going to be closer to 10:45. Okay. All right. So members of the public, if you could leave the meeting. Let's see, do we have anyone left? We have Bruce Robinson. And then the recording also needs to go off. We're now back in session. Lincoln, did you need some kind of consensus or vote from the commission? I feel like we have already approved it because it's in our budget. Isn't it already in an approved budget? I've been seeing this for quite a while.
I don't, are you talking about Glenwood?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, that is in a budget. You don't need to take any action on that.
Okay,
The other project that we may put off until next month is the resale of the Entrance Mountain piece. So we've negotiated a purchase price with them, but I need to go, I need to make sure we can come to terms on the Forever Wild conservation easement, and I'll bring that back to you for approval or a recommendation to proceed. I do need a recommendation to go ahead and continue that negotiation and bring back the final package to you for that resale project.
okay. If for all in favor of the resale of the 10-acre Entrance Mountain parcel, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed here? No. Okay. There you go.
Great.
Okay. This meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.